Time is 6:30, and I know we have a very full evening tonight, and I know a lot of people like to get on out of here as quickly as they can. At this time, we're going to have the public hearing, but before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and read the emergency evacuation announcement so we can get that out of the way for both this meeting and the agenda committee meeting following. In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm will sound. Everyone should exit the building by the way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you have reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the burning building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles. Mr. Clerk, will we please take a roll call? Mr. Clerk, do we have enough for a quorum?
I'm waiting on Mr. Kirby.
I got it.
Huh? I didn't want to have to read it 3 times, so I want to make sure it's memorable the first time. Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. I do have a note that Commissioner Moon and Commissioner Gamble both cannot attend tonight's meeting due to conflicts in scheduling, and Commissioner Kaler is out sick or out with an illness. Mr. Clerk, will you please read the public hearing for this evening?
Notice of public hearing in accordance with Tennessee Code annotated sections 5-5-105 and 13-7-105. The Board of County Commissioners of Blount County, Tennessee will hold public hearing on November 6, 2012, 6:30 p.m. at the Blount County Courthouse Commission Meeting Room for the following proposed amendment to the zoning resolution of Blount County, Tennessee, being Resolution 00-06-010. A resolution to amend the zoning resolution of Blount County, Tennessee, amending Section 7.3, 7.11.a, 9.3.g, 9.3.f, and adding a new section 9.3.i, addressing ridge top and hillside development in the R2 zone.
At this point in time, I will take from the floor anybody that would like to comment on this public notice. We have 2 speakers. Ma'am, what is your name, please? Can you spell your last name, please? Sure. And then Mr. McConnell. Han, yes, ma'am. Anybody else? Oh, we got, yes, ma'am. Cranfield? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Anybody else wishing to speak? Ms. Wambler, please come forward.
First, I want to ask a couple of questions so that I actually understand.
Ms. Wambler, please identify yourself so we can get it on the record.
I'm sorry, I'm Melody Womble.
And what district are you from, ma'am?
I'm sorry?
What district are you from?
Well, I live over in Southwood. The property that is actually impacted by this is in Calderwood. I don't know which district Calderwood's in, so.
Okay.
But it's the Calderwood property that's off Calderwood Highway where the ridgetop is impacted or possibly impacted. The first thing that I wanted to say is I went to a few of the meetings, lots of the special committee. I want to thank Mr. Wright and the other members of that particular committee because I know how many meetings they went to and then the meetings before that. And this was my time schedule. I work in Knoxville. I just couldn't continue to go to those meetings. The first thing I wanted to know is to basically understand what the changes are. I pulled something off of the internet from the Blount County. It's different than what this is tonight. Let me ask first about the amendments provisions for vacation rental cabins to conform to amended density in the R2 zone. Can someone, maybe Gordon or someone, tell me what exactly that means? What change that is?
Ma'am, this is not a time for us to answer questions. We will write down your questions and answer them during discussion later, but it's just a time for you to speak.
Okay. All right. Basically, my concern was the part that talks about the views and wanting to make sure that when a house is built, that the owner of the house can still have their views. Because when I'm reading this, it sounds to me like that perhaps you wouldn't be able to have your views from your house. And obviously, when you buy a view lot, the owner wants a view lot. So I wanted to make sure that we were getting a view, that was not being restricted. It sounds like perhaps it is being restricted to some extent. And if there was a problem about trying to have the view for the homeowners, perhaps a alternative solution would be okay, if the homeowner wants the view lot, then let them agree to have a natural looking exterior. I mean, I think the big issue for the county, the thing you need to be most careful about is to make sure that the new changes cannot be considered to be a taking, which we've talked about a lot. If you change lot sizes and it sounds like you're reducing the lot size, but if for some reason it's different and you've got to have a bigger lot or something, then that's going to be considered a taking. If it's smaller amount of land that you can have that lot on, then that's not a taking. The same thing with a view. You've got to be very careful. If you've got a $100,000 view and you restrict somebody from being able to put a house there to have that view, that is inverse condemnation, and that is a taking. So I just want to make sure that we're being very careful not to have that happen. We do have lots. I don't know if it's going to fall within or not fall within, but I certainly have lots. We're on the Dragon. I don't know if you've seen my house on the Dragon. We've built a very nice house on the Dragon, extremely nice house on the Dragon. About to bankrupt me, house on the Dragon. But
Ms. Womble, we have a 3-minute time limit, and thank you very much for your comments. Dr. McConnell, please, before you start, state your name and the district that you live in.
My name, for the record, is Tim McConnell. I live in the city of Maryville. The property I would like clarification on is up at the top of the world, Happy Valley area, just on the other side of the Foothills Parkway. I'm not sure exactly what district that is. 2 questions I would like to have them address for clarification is, we have a subdivision up there called Overlook at Montville we've been working on for several years, and we try to have really high standards up there. It has a preliminary plat already approved. We have not had the final yet till the final paving is done. I don't know if these new regulations will affect that since we already had the preliminary. That was one question I had that I'd like to have you look into. The second is with the scenic views. From what I've been trying to read with this, the actual where this property is at, you cannot see it from the city. It's on the other side of the Foothills Parkway, so you can't actually see that. So I wasn't sure if this is in the area of the regulations as well. So I'd like to have you maybe look at that and clarify those 2 points, since it already has a preliminary plat approved, and secondly, does this actually fall into the scenic view area since it's on the other side below the Foothills Parkway? So any development there you would not see from looking from Maryville or Alcoa. Thank you.
Ms. Hahn?
Hi, I'm Ingrid Hahn, and I live in District 10. Some of you have probably seen too much of me. I've been following this issue for several years now, attending meetings of the ad hoc committee and the planning committee, and watching as the proposed regulations have been hashed and rehashed. It's not that there aren't better places I would like to be tonight that I do this, but I would really like to see the county adopt some regulations for the protection of ridge tops and hillsides. I think it's past due, and we've been going around and around for, what, 5 years now? So I've come here tonight to address 2 things specific to the regulations you have before you tonight, revised. I endorse the current proposal as a vital first step, with one area of exception, and that is the proposed decrease in lot size in the R2 zone from 1 unit per 5 acres to 1 per 3 acres. Keep in mind that this would apply not only to ridge tops and hillsides, but to the entire R2 district, zone. This amounts to a 60% increase in residential density in R2. Surely this runs counter to the goals of the proposed regulations, which are designed to moderate, and I quote, the effect of development on erosion control, soil stability, and the natural environment, and quote, consistent with protection of the land for erosion control and soil stability. Honestly, I cannot see how substantially increasing density in the R2 will accomplish these stated goals for the proposed regs. As an aside, for those of you who have concerns about the county budget, we know that residential growth does not pay its own way in property taxes, so we should consider the fiscal burden for infrastructure that the county would incur if density increases in the R2 as opposed to closer in. Moving on quickly to the language regarding preservation of vegetation, you will hear objections to this, but frankly, as stated here, this section is designed to limit complete removal of trees, that is clear cutting. I think we can all agree that is something we want to prevent on ridge tops. Placing a value on keeping trees and vegetation in place is a win-win. It helps balance the goals we have of permitting development while preserving the county's scenic character. So I urge you to keep that language. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Ms. Skinner?
Hi, I'm Kathy Skinner. I live in District 9. I have here, I'm not allowed to show it to you, but it's Blount County Map 125, showing the side of Chilhowie Mountain from 6 Mile Road on up to the Foothills Parkway. Nearly half of the area on this map is already platted out, divided into more than 125 lots, about 5 acres each. Clearly, these lots are just waiting to be built on. In fact, there is a multi-acre subdivision on the very crest of Chilhowie Mountain, a private gated community with views of the Smokies to the east and the Tennessee Valley to the west. The question we must be asking ourselves is, what is Chilhowie Mountain going to look like when all these homes are built on it? Most Blount County residents do not want the local mountains and hillsides scarred like we've seen in Wares Valley. 4 years ago, a Planning Commission ad hoc committee developed regulations that would have required new development in certain areas of Zone R2 to blend in with the natural surroundings. The regs would have required preservation of existing vegetation for screening and use of non-reflective and neutral-colored buildings and roofing materials. Attorney for the mayor, Rob Goddard, gave his go-ahead as to the legality of the proposed regs with slight modifications. He even addressed the issue of takings. He said, "The U.S. Supreme Court has recognized that states and cities may enact land use regulations and restrictions to enhance the quality of life by preserving their character and desirable aesthetic features." Despite this legal opinion, the 2008 Planning Commission did not have enough interest in ridgetop protection or willpower to send the regs onto the County Commission. The regs fell by the wayside. A new ad hoc committee formed in 2010 and decided to start from scratch. Of the proposed regulations before you, 3 will help somewhat to protect ridgetops and hillsides. That would be restricting clear cutting, changing the setbacks, and eliminating clustering. The change of the minimum lot size from 5 acres down to 3, we do not feel is a good idea. Please ask the Planning Commission to delete that provision. Ask them to make it a priority to return the revised regs to you as soon as possible. Too many years have already passed. And so, in conclusion, I'd like to say that the next step is for the Planning Commission to develop regs that will lessen development's visual impact. We know that property values increase when development is not allowed to negatively impact surrounding property owners. The economic downturn in 2008 has limited construction of mountainside homes. That could change soon. Remember, there are hundreds of lots already on Chilhowie Mountain waiting to be built on. Please ask our Planning Commission to do more to preserve the natural appearance of our hillsides. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Skinner. Ms. Cranfield?
My name is Violet Cranfield, and I have property at Tallahassee and Top of the World both, and out in Louisville that could be considered as hilltop property. One reason that in the paper it said that this hilltop has been worked on since 2007. One reason is obvious why it's taken since 2007 for this to be worked on. The people of Blount County, if they know what's going on, has been here and has objected to the things that this hilltop resolution has been trying to put through. The hilltop resolutions, a big part of it puts many lives in danger. The restriction of people not being able to cut trees far enough back from their property, far enough back from their residence, when as much of the mountains as burns, the first house that burns and a property burns and a life goes up, that life will be at every one of these. If y'all vote for this and puts it in place, that they can't cut the trees and things back from their house where it won't be safe, it's going to, the life and or even it's just the house that goes up, the value of that house is going to be on everybody that votes for this hilltop resolution, the value of it. There's a lot of things, it also says in the paper that previously was tried to put in there, it was tried to put in there on the hilltop resolution, the color of the rooftop, the kind of material that people had to build their house out of, and clear-cut trees, and many other things. What other subdivision, or where else in Blount County, and they're not particularly talking about a certain place even, where else in Blount County has any subdivision said what color roof you had to put on your house, what kind of material you had to make your house out of, and how you had to construct it, how high it had to be, what kind of trees you had to be, what kind of shrubbery you had to use? It sounded to me like you're trying to, again, cut the common people out of having to be able to even build a house. This has got to be another high-priced subdivision if you develop anything that the common people can't even have a house even if they already own property up on top of a mountain somewhere, as well as the setbacks. And also, right now, there's, even though it's pulled back, once the hilltop resolution is put in place, now I can see that some.
Thank you very much. Your time is up, Ms. Cranfield. Thank you. Mr. Templeton, please make your way forward. Thank you, Ms. Cranfield. Mr. Templeton, come on forward, please. Ms. Cranfield, thank you for taking a seat. We appreciate your comments. Thank you.
My name is John Carlton Templeton. I'm in District 8. An effort to create sensible rules to protect the natural appearance and the healthy condition of the mountain sides and ridgetops in Blount County has now been underway for many years. The ad hoc committee that produced the current suggestions is, I believe, the third such group to take up the issue. The fact that the issue continues to be debated may be taken as a clear sign that there are both vested interest and community interests at play here. I have no doubt that our public does not want to see our vistas go the way of those of Sevier County and other locales who did not plan to fail, but simply failed to plan. I'm equally sure that major property owners with visions of various kinds of development in mind would like to maintain as many options as possible. With all this in mind, the proposals that resulted from the most recent effort I can only describe as disappointing. From the vast universe of effective measures that could have been recommended, we get a change in density provisions for vacation and rental cabins, a slight decrease in the building setback from local roads, an increase in the building density, and a vague limitation on the removal of trees. I'm inclined to endorse these changes, except for the increased density, because they are so ineffectual as to be relatively harmless, and because at this point, we may need to declare a small victory and move on to the next skirmish. Protection of Blount County's prime natural assets is surely comprised of more than these meager offerings. The goal is to protect the appearance and health of these mountains for ourselves, for our children, and yes, for the huge potential of tourist revenue that they represent for our county. Why have we not then addressed the appearance of the structures that will be built in terms of color, size, reflectivity, and durability? Why not measures to address storm runoff, the effects on streams, the survival of native species, access for emergency vehicles, water for firefighting, and other measures designed to meet the goal of maintaining the present beauty of our mountains? This issue is so critical to the future of our community that I would like to see a blue ribbon committee formed, made up not of just developers and politicians, but representing a broad swath of the community, including some with real technical expertise on the subject. This, I believe, is the logical and businesslike way to get this job done to the satisfaction of all of our citizens and to ensure that the goal of keeping Blount County beautiful is accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Templeton. At this time, I will declare the public meeting closed. As we reset, do we want to take a small recess, or do we want to go straight on into the agenda meeting? Keep rolling. Consensus is we're going to keep rolling. As soon as Mr. Clerk has the tape recorder reset, we will take roll call for the agenda meeting. All right, we are ready to go. Please register your presence.
Okay, you have 15 present, 6 absent, you have a quorum.
Very well, thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. At this time, we have public input of items on the agenda. Anybody wishing to speak to tonight's agenda, please raise your hands. Seeing no one wishing to make any comments on tonight's agenda, we will move for approval of the agenda committee minutes. Do I have a motion? We have a motion made by Mr. Lael, a second by Mr. Carver. Any discussion on the minutes from October 9th of 2012? Seeing no discussion, please vote.
You have 15 yeses.
Very good. The minutes from the October 9th, 2012 meeting are hereby approved. At this time, I'll move for a motion to set the agenda. We have a motion made by Mr. Melton, seconded by Mr. Wright. Any discussion on tonight's agenda? Seeing no discussion, please vote.
You have 15 yeses.
The agenda has been set for tonight's meeting. Item E1, resolutions for special recognitions. I don't think there are any. We will then move down to appointments. There are 3 sets of appointments. I'll entertain a motion regarding the appointments for the consent calendar.
I make a motion to approve E2A, B, and C.
We have a motion made by Mr. Wright to move items E2A, B, and C forward to the full commission for approval. Is there a second? We have a second by Ms. Lambert. Any discussion, Mr. Farmer?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to request, in reality, item 2C. In looking through our packet, it appears, and the way it's written up, that it's the mayor's appointment. I would like to defer this until December in order to review this. In reviewing what's in our packet, it appears it's in fact not the mayor's. It's the board, the hospital board, who is sending the names to the mayor. They're picking their own nominees. So I would like to take the time to review this, pull past history on it, and defer only item 2C until December.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Mr. Wright, will you, Ms. Lambert, do you agree to remove item E2C from your motion that you seconded?
Only if it's friendly.
All right, any other discussion on, we're only discussing right now items E2A, the Planning Commission appointments, and E2B for forwarding to the full commission. Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, please vote to forward E2A and E2B forward to the full commission.
You have 15 yeses.
E2A and E2B shall be forwarded to the full commission. Now then, Mr. Farmer, would you like to make a motion regarding E2C?
E2C until the December Agenda Committee meeting to give us a little time to pull the past resolutions setting this up on how these nominations should actually be coming about.
Is there any second by Ms. Lambert? Motion made by Mr. Farmer. Discussion by Mr. French. Mr. French, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Farmer, but there's a letter in our packet sent from the Blount Memorial Hospital nominating committee that nominates these two.
That's in essence my point, Mr. French. I thought that it was the mayor's nominations, but in essence, apparently from what's in our packet, it isn't. It's their nominating committee. That's why I would like to defer this until next month in order to pull the resolutions establishing this and how we handle it. I'm not really comfortable forwarding it on. That was my whole point. It was my understanding it was the mayor's nominations on these appointments. According to this, it isn't. It's their board's nominating committee.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading according to the letter. Okay.
That's why I'd like to defer it until December.
Okay.
14 yeses and 1 abstain.
E2C shall be deferred to the December agenda meeting. We'll now move forward to F1, a resolution adopting regulations to protect water quality in the urbanized area of Blount County by prohibiting, suppressing, and preventing the contamination of stormwater by grading, erosion, and sedimentation. I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion made by Mr. Kirby to forward this to the full commission. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Melton. Any discussion on this item? Seeing no discussion, please vote to forward F1 forward to the full commission for approval.
We have 13 yeses and 2 noes and 1 abstain.
Item F1 shall be forwarded to the full commission. At this time, we'll go to item G1, budget transfers. I believe we have 1 budget transfer. Is that correct, Mr. Vineyard?
Yes.
At this point in time, I believe that the budget transfer is to transfer $50,000 regarding money that came in to us from drug court. I'll entertain a motion to forward this to the full commission. We have a motion made by Mr. Melton. Is there a second? Second made by Ms. Lambert. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing no discussion, please vote.
We have 16 yeses.
Item G1, $50,000 budget transfer for a drug court grant shall be forwarded to the full commission. And I believe there are 4 budget increases. Is that correct, Mr. Vineyard?
Yes.
We have a motion made by Mr. Samples to move all 4 budget increases forward to the full commission. Is there a second? Second made by Mr. Wright. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote.
We have 16 yeses.
All 4 items of the budget increases shall be forwarded to the full commission. Mr. Vineyard, are there any other budget items for this evening?
No.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vineyard. We'll now move on to item G4. We have a motion made by Mr. Farmer, seconded by Mr. French. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote to forward item G4, presentation at the November 15th, 2012 commission meeting by Blount County Schools Director Rob Britt.
We have 16 yeses.
Item G4 shall be forwarded to the full commission. Item G5, a resolution to amend the zoning resolution of Blount County, Tennessee, amending section 7.3, 7.11.A, 9.3.G, 9.3F, and adding a new section 9.3I addressing ridgetop and hillside development in the R2 zone. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to forward this on to the full commission. Motion made by Mr. Kirby, seconded by Mr. Wright. Any discussion? Mr. Carver?
I do have one question in regards to Mr. McConnell. He was talking about his pre-approved plots that were set up there. Does this affect what has already been put in place? Can I get an answer from that? Maybe Mr. Lamb?
Mr. Lamb, please come forward if you can answer the question. We've already got the mic on for you.
Part of that subdivision has actually been finalized. I think there were 2 phases that were final, so the first 2 phases would not be affected by any density requirements.
Now, as far as the permits go, there would be some requirements as far as what would be allowed for clearing on individual lots. The third phase, I think it's the back phase, has not been finalized, and that would be affected because that subdivision portion has a preliminary plat that has expired.
So in other words, the two final stages are not grandfathered in of what's that? They've not even been filed?
The first two are grandfathered in because they're final, they're registered. I'm correct on that, am I not? Okay. The last one has not been finalized. It had preliminary plat status. Preliminary plats are good for 2 years, and I think it's been more than 2 years since we've had any activity on that subdivision.
Okay.
Now, there might be some residual coverage in the zoning regulations, and I would have to check that because there are some provisions in the zoning regulations that state that if you have a stamped design, stamped by a professional, and shows your intent, then new regulations would not apply. So I'd have to check on that. But the coverage of the plat has expired on that last section.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Farmer, or Mr. Carver, any other questions? Mr. Farmer?
Yes, sir, Mr. Lamb, while you're there, and in reference to Dr. McConnell, it's been several years, but as I'm remembering, most all of his property is on the back side of Chilhowee Mountain overlooking Happy Valley, if I recall correctly. Is that involved in these restrictions? I thought as it was originally written up, and as I have read it, it was the view from Calderwood Highway from 321. I guess my question to you is this: does the backside, and Dr. McConnell asked this also, does the backside overlooking Happy Valley fall within these restrictions?
First off, this thing's been through several permutations. The first permutation did look at visual appearance and did limit itself to the front side of Chilhowee Mountain and limited it to roads. The visual aspect of those regulations was taken out completely. We no longer have any basis for regulation in the present proposal for visual impact. So no, it is applying now only to the R2 zone, and that development is in the R2 zone, but it doesn't have any implication for visual impact. In other words, it's purely for erosion control, et cetera.
Does that answer your question, Dr. McConnell?
Not exactly. I'm not sure, because the final phase has all been graded and paved and all that, so I'm confused. How does that affect when we go to get our final plat on there?
Should I?
Mr. Farmer, do you have another question you'd like to ask Mr. Lamb?
Yes. How does that affect his final phase on that?
Well, as I said, the preliminary plat has expired. With the preliminary plat expired, you'd have to come in with a new preliminary plat for that final phase, and they would have to meet the present regulations, whatever regulations were in effect at that time. Right now, it would be compliant, but if it changes, it might not be. I cannot tell you with any certainty right now. I'd have to actually check the record on that plat and check the other provisions in the zoning regulations that state if you have a stamped proposal, then you're covered. And he does have a stamped proposal. It's stamped by a surveyor, and we have engineering stamps on it, so it might be covered under that provision. I just have to do some research on it, quite frankly.
I really have a problem if somebody answers my question by saying might. It's either yes or it's no.
I will have to do more research on it.
Okay, if you have to do more research, that's fine.
I think I was clear on that.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Mr. Samples?
Mr. Lamb, what is the real reason for reduction in the density requirement?
We are actually not reducing the density requirement. Our present regulations allow 1 unit per 3 acres for clustered subdivision. So what we're doing, we're just saying we're not going to allow the clustering anymore, but we will allow the 1 unit per 3 acres. Now that applies at present if this is adopted and the subdivision regulations are not amended otherwise. This will allow only 1 unit per 3 acres on paved roads. So if you have paved roads, you can get 1 unit per 3 acres. If it is on gravel road, it's still 1 unit per 5 acres under our subdivision regulations. So the density is consistent. Let me tell you, the density is consistent with our land use plan from the year 2000. Land use plan said the density break in the R2 area is 1 unit per 3 acres. The 1 unit per 5 acres was actually a concession to the present subdivision regulations for gravel roads. But we did allow clustering down to 1 unit per 3 acres. So there's basically no change. Just do not allow clustering.
That's all I have.
Ms. Samples, thank you very much. Mr. Melton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was the question I was going to ask, why you reduced it from 3 to 5, from 5 to 3. I've had some calls on this, and a lot of people are very concerned about the soil up there. Most of it is rock and shale, and they've been concerned about septics and things of that sort. It's one reason they have a problem reducing it down to 3 from 5. Also, would you explain to me about clear cutting? In other words, I'm just using this for an example. If I have a mountaintop up there, let's say of 100 acres, can I go up there and cut those trees down right now?
If you're harvesting trees, it's an agricultural use and it's exempt from our regulation. So yes, you could, quote, clear cut and harvest your trees.
Okay, and if it's agricultural?
Well, harvesting trees is an agricultural activity.
Okay, so what if I had 2 acres, 3 acres, and I consider it agricultural?
Again, harvesting trees is harvesting trees.
So you can't clear cut trees any time right now if you want to on a piece of property as long as it's not in a subdivision, am I right?
Well, it's not a matter of whether it's a subdivision or not. It's a matter of whether you're harvesting trees for agricultural purposes, for use as firewood or use as timber, etc.
Okay.
I mean, that has exemption under state law and exemption under our regulations.
Concerned with clear cutting, but the way it is right now, you can clear cut if you want to.
If it's an agricultural,
Yeah, well, I can
I'm not
say
going
I'm
to state
cutting it for
categorically,
timber.
if it's an agricultural use, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right now, we have no regulation on it at all.
Right. Well, is there a state regulation or anything like that?
I think there might be some best management practice regulations for erosion control, but I'm not up on that. It would still allow you to cut them, but you might have to mitigate the erosion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melton.
Sorry for using the term might again, but
Mr. Wright?
Yeah, I'd like to clear up one of the questions asked, if I may, Mr. Chairman. One was Mr. Melton. The lot size, and this is kind of confusing right now, calls for 5 acres minimum. But if you do a cluster development, you can put a house on 1.5 acres. The land does not have to be together. You see what I'm saying? So if you want to build on 1.5 acres right now, you can up there, but you got to put the other 3.5 acres somewhere else, which it has no effect other than to decrease our county revenue if you by putting it in a common area. So we're not actually decreasing the lot size if you take into consideration of a cluster development. We're actually increasing it. I got lots up there in my place at 1.5 acres. If I had to do over again, I wouldn't do that. But we did cluster development. Am I correct?
that's correct. I didn't mention that. The cluster provisions allow you to go down to 1/2 the minimum, and the base minimum on clustering on the density is 1 unit per 3 acres, therefore 1.5 acres. The other 1.5 acres would be open space.
Mr. Fultz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another question was asked in the public hearing was there were comments made that this resolution was somehow specifying the materials to be used in a house.
That's not correct.
I didn't see anything like that in the resolution.
No, that was one of the previous permutations. This one does not address visual impact.
Okay, I just wanted you to confirm that for the public. Number two, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Hasty?
Yes, sir. Mr. Lamb, back to the deal with the trees. One of the citizens asked about views and can you cut your view? At what point in time does that
fall into cutting a view and clear cutting?
We do not address views. We do not address the visual impact of the development. We're only addressing the limitation of cutting of trees and vegetation for erosion control purposes. And it does allow cutting of trees for principal structure and principal use, and accessory structure and accessory use. I know it. I'll just give you an example. In one of the previous, I think it was a previous public hearing on this, somebody was raising the question, well, can you build a fire pit? Well, yes, you can clear for the fire pit. You can clear for quite a few other things. You can clear for a garden, because that's an accessory use. Doesn't have to be just for a structure.
Okay.
But it does not affect visual aspects of the property.
Okay, then back to the clear cutting though. If a person owns the property up there, you said they could clear cut for agricultural use, cut everything down if that's what they want, right?
If it is for agricultural use and harvesting of trees is an agricultural use, then it is exempt from our regulation, both in state law and in our own regulations. I think the second paragraph in our zoning regulations say we do not regulate agricultural use.
And then if in the next year after you cut all the trees down, you want to put a subdivision there, how will that play into this?
Well, if there's nothing to cut down, I don't know that it would play into anything.
Okay. But what I'm getting at is still trying to, I think in a agricultural setting, you cut your trees, generally you're replanting them if you're in the agricultural end of it.
If you use best management practices in forestry, you do replant.
And I guess what I'm trying to get at is what protection would we have from somebody just saying, I'll take the money not only for the trees, but I'll take the money from the property. And I understand if they cut all the trees, the property's not going to be worth as much anyway. But the damage then will be done and the rest.
You'll have to ask the state legislature on that, because they're the ones that exempt it.
Mr. Melton?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I'm through.
Mr. Foltz, you have another follow-up question?
Yes, just a quick follow-up. Who decides whether the cutting was for agricultural purposes or whether they were just clear cutting?
Well, clear cutting is a term of forestry, and I presume that they're clear cutting and harvesting trees. This is all hypothetical.
In other words, somebody goes up there and cuts every tree down on their piece of property.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who decides whether they did it for agricultural purposes or whether they just did it because they wanted to open up their view?
I don't know.
In other words, nobody decides. They can just do it.
I don't know.
That's what it sounds like. Because if you don't enforce it, then nobody's going to enforce it. So, excuse me, but this provision against clear cutting seems to me to be political eyewash. Thank you.
Mr. French?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions. The harvesting of trees for firewood is considered an agricultural venture, even though...
that would be, it would either be an accessory use, if it was for personal use on the property itself, or it would be for sale, which would be an agricultural use. Yes.
So whether they're going to sell it or keep it for themselves, it doesn't make any difference. They can go up and cut every tree they want.
Keeping it for yourself for firewood is an accessory use.
Okay, I guess I want to address, I think, Ms. Cranfield's, one of her questions was the cutting of trees to make it safe for the homeowner. And there, I know there are provisions out there, and there's a push for making property fire-wise. And how does that, is this going to affect that particular provision of keeping these properties fire-wise and help prevent the spread of wildfire?
We do not require that Firewise principles be used. That's not part of the regulations, but it does state very clearly that Firewise program principles may be used. It's in the regulations themselves.
So what you're telling me, it doesn't prevent them from cutting the trees with these fire.
Yes.
Wise.
No, we
Purposes.
recognize that the protection
Okay.
of the property is an important aspect of public health, safety, and welfare.
Mr. French, you have any other questions? All right. Ms. Merle.
I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused about clear cutting. I mean, I think what everybody is getting to is someone can purchase property, clear cut it for agricultural, and then a year later sell it to developer to put homes up there. Is that right?
That could be a progression.
So, and maybe this is not your area, but is there a special license you have to get to be an agricultural farmer or whatever?
I don't know if any, I don't think
mean,
farmers would stand for that.
Because this seems pretty mute if you can just claim it and then do it.
We've had several subdivisions in the lowland where they will go on and log it, and then they will put in a subdivision. The logging of it was an extractive industry, which is agricultural. I mean, you're actually harvesting trees, so yes, it could be that progression. It's occurred in the lowlands. It could occur in the mountains too.
So, is there something that we can add into this to prevent it or to put?
Like I say, in my opinion, you can explore this further, and some other planners have explored it. In my opinion, based on experience in the past, when it's an agricultural exemption in state law and state statutes, and when we have that same exemption in our own regulations, you cannot regulate it.
Thank you.
I have the board clear. Is there any other discussion or questions about this issue? Seeing no discussion, please vote to forward this on to the full commission.
You have 9 yeses, 6 noes, 1 abstain.
Motion fails to be forwarded to the full commission. This time we'll go for item G6, a resolution authorizing an animal transfer agreement and the Blount County Mayor to enter into agreement with various animal rescue entities for the purpose of transferring animals from the Blount County Animal Center to various animal rescue entities. I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion made by Mr. Samples to forward it to the full commission, second by Ms. Lambert. Any discussion? Ms. Birchfield.
I've just got 2 questions. One of them is at what cost, if it will cost us anything, no? And what are the estimated savings to the county? Do we have any numbers?
Mr. Samples, do you have any information?
I don't have specifics. I can give you approximations. The county, we are making money from that for 2 reasons. One, we're clearing our shelter by sending the animals off. And secondly, we are charging those rescues for those animals. And I think each one of the trips, and it depends on the number of animals they take, the vans have been donated, the lettering has been donated, everything's been donated. Each trip will yield around $1,200, something like that, $1,200, $1,500. The only thing that we reimburse out of that is the cost of the diesel fuel, and that really is only going to be about $500, and it costs about $700 for the fuel. The rest of it is deposited into the general county fund.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samples. Any other questions? Mr. Samples, did you want to talk to this, or were you just answering Ms. Birchfield's questions? No other discussion. The board is clear. Please vote to forward this on to the full commission. Mr. Carver? Not going to have that, Ms. Lambert. One vote, one person.
Okay, you have 15 yeses.
Item G6 shall be forwarded on to the full commission. At this time, there's a request to set a public hearing for a resolution to amend the zoning resolution of Blount County, Tennessee by adding a new section 7.18, design standards for commercial campgrounds and recreational vehicle parks. Amend sections 9.1B, 9.2B, 9.3B to include commercial campgrounds and recreational vehicle parks, and amend section 13 to include definitions for camping cabins and commercial campgrounds. The next available public meeting time would be in this room on December the 11th, 2012 at 6:30 p.m. I'll entertain a motion regarding the setting of a public hearing. Motion made by Mr. Kirby, seconded by Mr. Wright. Any discussion of the setting of the public hearing for December 11th, 2012 at 6:30 p.m. in room 430? One discussion. Mr. Foltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the 5th time this has come up before this commission. The last time it was voted down, there was not a single vote in favor. The changes are minor. At the very least, this commission needs some rules about how often you can bring something up desperately. But beyond that, at the very least, we owe the public who have come out for every one of these hearings at least the courtesy of not holding this hearing during the holidays. And I would hope that we would choose sometime in January as opposed to right in the middle of the holidays.
Mr. Foltz, are you making a motion to amend the hearing date?
Yes,
from December 11th?
I would like to amend the motion to hold the hearing in January.
The next available date would be January the 8th. Mr. Kirby, as the maker of the motion, would you amend your motion to accommodate January the 8th?
What's the reason? I just heard holiday.
If I can summarize for Mr. Foltz, I believe. The official motion that Mr. Foltz has made was to amend the public hearing date and move it outside the holiday time period and move it to January the 8th at 6:30 p.m. in this room. As the maker of the motion, I was asking if you would like to go ahead and amend it to that public hearing date instead of December the 11th. Otherwise, we'll go to a full vote.
Only reason is just because the holidays to move it.
Yes, sir. That's what I heard.
Well, the first comment was that it's been here 5 or 6 times.
I understand what you're saying about his first comment. After the conclusion of his comment, he did make a motion, so that's what we're discussing right now. As a maker of the motion, you have the right to amend it to change that date.
I think we need to go ahead with it.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to amend the date to January the 8th at 6:30 p.m. in room 430. Do I have a second for Mr. Foltz's motion? I'll second. Second by Ms. Merle. Is there any discussion on this vote, on the amendment of this motion? Mr. Wright, are you for this motion or are you for the prior one?
Well, it would affect this motion. Commissioners, we worked on this religiously and we brought it to commission last time. I was part of that committee and we took notes on all the problems that the commissioners had with this resolution and we corrected them all that was said to us at that time. So now I don't understand why we keep bringing stuff up and finding more things wrong with it. I mean, if there's a legitimate problem, yes, but we took all of the comments from the commissioners last time, or rather the committee did, and addressed all of them. So I don't see the point of bouncing this thing around.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. No other discussion for right now. We are going to only be voting on the amending of the hearing date from December the 11th to January the 8th of 2013. A vote yes is a vote to amend the hearing date. A vote no is to leave it on December the 11th. Please vote.
Okay, you have 7 yeses, 8 noes, 6 absent.
The amendment to the motion fails. The original motion on the floor is to have this public hearing set for December the 11th, 2012. Is there any additional discussion on that motion? Seeing no discussion, please vote to set the public hearing for this resolution to be on December the 11th, 2012 at 6:30 p.m. in room 430.
You have 12 yeses, 3 noes, 1 abstain.
Motion passes. Public hearing will be set on December the 11th, 2012 at 6:30 p.m. in room 430. Item G8 is a report regarding Laurel Lake. There's information in your packet. Mr. Wright, did you want to talk about this? Are you sure about that? How briefly is brief, Mr. Wright?
Very brief.
Your turn on, Mr. Wright.
Commissioners, I have included in your packet a letter explaining, or rather giving you a update as to exactly where we're at as far as reestablishing Laurel Lake. If you have any questions or anything, why, please ask me, and if you need any details or anything else on this particular item.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Lael?
Mr. Wright, what is the authorization of this committee that has been formed? Who is, I mean, I see a lot of names on there, but has there been an authorization by a governmental entity to do this?
Who has given authorization?
To form this committee, or is this just a committee that came together, mutual interest?
No, actually it started back with our previous mayor, who gave us permission to start on it.
Okay, so that committee...
It's been ongoing ever since that time.
And this committee is an outgrowth or a continuation of that original committee? And the you know, we've incurred quite a bit of cost in that area up there, and it's kind of interesting. As this committee goes forward, are they developing a cost analysis of these projects that were described in this letter and so forth, and
We have not done a
responsible?
per se cost analysis. We do have a concept plan, and we have to see, first of all, if we can physically do it or not.
Okay.
And when we file our concept with the state for permits and determine that, then we'll bring it back before the commission. And
okay, so in other words, you're looking at preliminarily, that's a word, gathering permits, et cetera, before you put it on.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much. That clear.
Mr. French?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wright, how much property are we talking about? I'm just curious. I know the golf course takes up part of that property.
Well, there's 2 tracks. One is the bear habitat, and then the other is the lake itself. The lake itself is 88 acres. The bear habitat, we're not going to mess with it because of deed restrictions. Matter of fact, the only thing we can do with that property is reestablish the lake according to the restrictions. So 88 acres is the correct answer.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. At this time, seeing no other discussion on item G8, we'll go to public input of items not on the agenda. Any comments of items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to, actually, I have one announcement. On Saturday morning, November the 10th, I'm trying to pull up my memo. We will be having our Veteran Day ceremony in this room, starting at 9:45 a.m. with a reception before. The way this reads, it says the reception starts at 9:45 a.m. with the program to commence thereafter. Doesn't tell me what time the program commences, but it's November the 10th, Saturday in this room for Veterans Day ceremony. So please plan on attending. Any other announcements, Mr. Lael?
Mr. Chairman, William Blount High School does a Veterans Day observance on the Friday before Veterans Day each year, and I'm sure that they would be more than happy to welcome any and all that came to that observation.
Thank you, Mr. Lael. Mr. French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is an Education Committee meeting Thursday at 12 noon at Heritage High School.
Thank you, Mr. French. Seeing no other, Mr. French has got the strange button over there tonight. Seeing no other questions, comments, or lights lit up, I'll take a motion to adjourn. We are staying adjourned.